Snell here, and welcome back to highintensitybusiness.com, the podcast where we share proven strategies and tactics so you can start growing your strength training business with confidence. This is episode 324. And today's guest is Niri Patel, who is Managing Director of Fit20 UK. And today we're going to be using this as an opportunity to explore Niri's background and vision for Fit20 UK and give you insight into the Fit20 business and the Fit20 franchise opportunity. Niri, it's a long time coming. We've been trying to get this scheduled for ages, so it's great to finally have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad we managed to work it out. It's my pleasure to be here.
We got there in the end, and I don't think COVID helped with that. I'd love to just start off with that, actually, because I know it's always fascinating to hear what business owners' experiences have been over the last 18 months or so. And we'd just love to hear, how it affected you and how you guys responded in the UK and more widely than that. I'd love to get an update on that.
Sure. Well, we're classified as a gym in the UK. I don't believe we are because of the way we operate. We're safer than your supermarket shop by a long shot. Inherent in our training protocols, there's social distance. But because we don't have the footprint and the scale, I guess we couldn't get an exception to that. So we did have to close. And we offered an online offering to keep our members working away once a week, maybe twice a week, because the level of intensity of what we were doing is not as high as you would get in the studio.
Okay, cool. Succinct. Appreciate the update. All right. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background before we get into the details around Fit20. So what is it? Can you just give us a little pot history, I suppose, of your history leading up to Fit20? What's your business background like?
Yeah, I'll have to give you a very potted version. One of these people who spent a long time looking around for what was really I felt my calling in life. So I've got an engineering background. I graduated from university with an engineering degree, went to work in the city. And I went to do that only because my flatmate was a mathematician at university. And he said, I'm going to go and work in the city and do this. It's really cool. You get paid loads of money and there's only a few people that do this. So, get paid lots of money and be a rare person that does a particular type of job. Ticked all the boxes for me as a 21-year-old. But within the first few years of working there, I realized that whilst it was well paid, it wasn't fulfilling for me. And I was surrounded by good people, but health wasn't the priority. It was just wealth. And working in the industry now, you have no wealth without your health. So I went through looking for things that I could do. I had various startups. The first business I actually started was a cleaning business with an old school friend. He seemed really relaxed and happy every time I bumped into him. I thought, well, he looks happy. I'll do what he does. So that lasted about 6 months and didn't really work out. And I went through a number of businesses that I tried. But along with working in the city, I was stressed and what you might call vertically ill. So I was well enough to get into work, but I always felt horrible, unwell, and occasionally I'd take time off. In fact, I had 16 weeks off work in an 18-month period. I had my tonsils removed by a Harley Street specialist because the company I worked in had a great medical plan. And I just found I was still feeling horrible, except my tonsils were no longer hurting because they weren't there. So I had all the other symptoms. And I guess, sounds cliched, but my life changed one day when I read a book by a guy called Tony Robbins. And there's a book called Unlimited Power. He's a lot better known, around the world now, than he was 28 years ago when I first read this book. And it was a book on success. But in there, chapter 7, I think it was called Physiology, the Avenue of Excellence. And basically it was saying, you can have all these goals and you get up in the morning and your mind says, go get them. But your body says, actually, instead of jumping out of bed, you just roll over and hit snooze. And I thought, this is me. And he talked about a way of eating and living that I thought, well, I've tried everything else. I've had all sorts of medication and procedures. Nothing works. Let's try this for what he called the 21-day challenge. My symptoms cleared up. My energy went up. I lost some excess weight. I had various allergies like eczema and things like that. They all disappeared. And I actually became a happier person. And people said, oh, you're not as miserable as you used to be. What are you doing? You look great. So I started sharing that. And my father always taught for a living in secondary schools when he was working. So I grew up around education and always had a passion for education. But as I've already said, I went for the money rather than the teaching. And I just started sharing the things that I'd learned, not just from Tony Robbins, but I started to learn from other people around health and wellness. And it turned into a business by default, where somebody would come to me and say, I've got this problem. Can you help me? And I'd be like, no, but I can help you figure it out. Should we do it? And it worked really well. And it was while I was doing that I got invited to this business referral organization called BNI by somebody I knew and respected in business. And he said, come along. It was 7 a.m. I didn't know there were 2 7 o'clocks in the day at that time. I went along to this meeting and I thought, this is fantastic. People are going to help me to find business if I just look out for opportunities for them as well. What a great way to do business. It's not as cutthroat as my experience of working around finance in the city had been. So I got involved in that. And about 3 months into that, I ended up actually becoming a franchisee with that organization, because the people who brought BNI to the UK and pretty much most of Europe and other parts of the world were friends of mine before they got into BNI. Lovely couple called Martin and Gilly Lawson. Sadly, Martin's passed away a few years ago. But they got me into BNI, and I'd moved to Yorkshire and we started that. I took that to India and realized that I'm actually good at this. I'm good at helping people in business. I thought of it as personal development, but the language we used was business development. And I think if you want to improve at things and get better results in your business, you have to be a better business person and a better individual, whether it's communication, strategy, or whatever. You know, good people get good results if you do good things. So I built that up with help, obviously, of a great team into BNI's best territory ever, and it's still flourishing. And left that in 2015. And then in Jan 2016, I had a phone call from a BNI colleague saying there's this amazing thing called Fit20 that you need to look at. And he showed me, and I said, it's a gym. I'm not interested in a gym, because my concept of a gym was a place that I felt intimidated to go to. I think there's a word for it now, gym intimidation. So I was one of those that suffered from this.
That's new.
But he was persistent, and also Akil is his name. He's actually involved in Fit20 now in a much bigger way, because he runs the US with Fit20. But at the time, his wife had one studio in a little town in the middle of nowhere in Netherlands. And he was really excited. And because he had a really successful background in business, he had the fastest growing payroll bureau in the Netherlands for 6 years running. So I thought, well, if he's telling me that there's something I need to look at least let me do my due diligence, which is a good lesson in life I've learned along the way. You know, understand the numbers and the facts yourself before you say yes or no. So I did. And the more I looked at it, I actually thought, you know, this is really good. This could be something that I could do as a customer, first and foremost, because I'd done a lot of the running and going to the gym and swimming and everything else. But I was finding that injuries and lack of time was a real issue. And I thought, well, you know, I'm getting to that stage in my life. I'm approaching 50, and maybe it's time to stop jumping around and sweating and things like that, and see if I can do something that gets me similar results, maybe better, but in a fraction of the time. And I met Walter, who you've had on the series of podcasts, the founder of Fit20 and his team there. And I just thought, these are really good people. They're very knowledgeable. They seem very sincere. And the business stacks up. So why don't we bring this to the UK and help people? Because if it can help me with my passion for wanting to help others, I've always looked for businesses that I felt I could make a genuine and meaningful difference. Then let's do it. So here we are today.
So interesting. There's so much I want to touch on what you said. And yeah, I mean, the interesting about Walter, I find, is he's really obviously passionate about this way of exercise, but he's also got of just a fantastic business head, and that combination is I think quite rare. The job you mentioned, by the way, just for the benefit of listeners all around the world, when Niri says the city, you obviously mean London, just to be clear. And you were, is it an actuary? Is that correct? Just to clarify.
Yeah. So I was a trainee consulting actuary for a couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just because I don't know, I was curious about that, and I thought maybe the listeners might be too. And then when you started your own consultancy, effectively helping people get results, was that called Synergy? That's your LinkedIn profile for that. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Because you've been doing that for a long time, right? So I'd love to hear how you expand on that. So you mentioned how it was like at the first, it was like, people would come to you and say, Niri, I need your help with X. And you were like, okay, I don't quite have the solution for that right now, but let's work it out together. And then you figured out a business model around that. Was that kind of how it worked? It was like a consulting fee, like you were charging clients for this sort of specialist one-on-one holistic lifestyle health coaching, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So the first person, I was still working in the city when this was going on, and people would phone me. So I don't know if you've ever done something like you get a really great result and you just start enthusing, you become this raving fan about it. And what it did was it polarized people. Some people were really drawn to it and they'd just engage and we'd chat for hours about it, right? And then others would sort of, not literally, but you sense that if they saw you on the street, they'd walk to the other side and keep their head down. And I was a bit like that. And obviously I've modified my approach since then. But I actually started getting phone calls at work from people saying, look, I'm a friend or a neighbor or my mum or my aunt said that you've helped her with this, that, and the other. Can you help me? And I'd be like, okay, well, look, I'll call you my lunch break. Okay, bye. And eventually got to the stage where, it wasn't right that this was happening while I was essentially being paid by somebody else. So I, resigned my position in the merchant bank that I was working for at the time in the city of London in the UK. And then people would come to me and say, I've got this problem. Can you help me? And I'd be like, sure. And it was based around the stuff I learned from Tony Robbins in that, we all run this triad of how we use our body, what we put into it, our thoughts and beliefs. And that then generates the kind of result we get. And I actually got to a stage where people were coming to me where they'd be depressed. They were told they were depressed. And I'd work with them in one session and get them to move their body in a radically different way and then pattern it and condition it. And they would go away and I'd send them to their doctor and say, look, you're not allowed to come off your medication on my recommendation because I'm not a doctor. But speak to your doctor if you're feeling better and get the dose taken down. And if you can come off it because the doctor thinks you're doing great, then do that. And I've got a stack of testimonials of people that I helped to do this for a good few years. And then I still help people occasionally, but there are lots of people that can help with that sort of thing now because the type of work that Tony Robbins does and lots of other people, there are a lot more people doing it, or at least I know a lot more people doing it. So generally, I tend to pass them on to do that. Unless there's someone who comes along where I think, oh, this would be particularly interesting to work with them, then I do that.
There are certainly more people doing it, but there's also quite a few charlatans out there, isn't it? So you've got to be wary. But yeah, perhaps around the time you were doing it, it wasn't so big. But no, it's fascinating to hear because I wanted you to elaborate on that and give your history, just because I know there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who are kind of become very passionate about strength training and high intensity training. And maybe they want to start some kind of business. Maybe they want to do their own studio. Maybe they want to buy into a Fit20 franchise. Maybe they want to do something else that's related. And it's just really interesting always to hear someone's backstory, like what they went through. And it sounds like you've always had that itch, right? To be an entrepreneur and do something you're passionate about. And so it's quite inspiring to hear you go through that journey, but then also arrive at Fit20 where you are now. I'm a big fan of BNI. I was part of BNI early on in my sales career, and I love the concept. And I met some really good friends there who I've stayed in contact with. And I just really enjoyed it. And it helped me become a much better public speaker and communicator, I think, because it forced you to do the 60-second elevator pitch and all of that. And I think that's where I started really learning about the kind of karmic nature of doing business and focusing on serving and helping others, and then getting what you need and want in return, but making that the focus. So in terms of BNI, I made a point to ask you about this because I think Walter and others, I know actually Owen Dockham, close friend of mine who runs a studio in San Francisco, had enormous success using BNI to grow his studio. And in the beginning, I believe he attributed about 75% of his revenue from BNI people. So I'm just curious if you could talk about BNI in relation to maybe how you leveraged it to grow Fit20 studio clienteles in the past or still currently.
So when I first heard about Fit20, in my mind, I was thinking, this is new to me, so it's going to be new to others as a way of training. How do we tell people about this? Because we can't be a secret if we're going to be successful. And when I went to Holland, they've been going for 11, 12 years there with Fit20, and they've got 120, 130 studios. The first thing they do when a new franchisee comes on board is say, look, there are various ways for you to get the word out there. But one of the things is you've got to join a group like BNI. BNI is the best. But if you don't have a BNI there, find something else. So I thought, well, that's good. I understand BNI. I could certainly help our franchisees be successful. So I thought, well, I know we can make this work. And the great thing about BNI, as you know, is you have this concept of a one-to-one. You spend a bit of time not selling to each other, but actually just learning about each other to see how you might be able to help each other. Maybe I can't become a customer, but I know people who can for you. And in doing that, if you've got a group of 30 people, each of those 30 people are going to come to your studio and try this. And there's no hard sell in Fit20. You experience it and you think, wow, this is great. Can I come back again? What are the membership options? And away you go. Or you think, well, that's really nice, but it's not my thing. And that's okay. If you like tea, that's great. Doesn't make you wrong. I don't like tea personally. It doesn't make me right or wrong either. So it's like that. So, immediately you can have 30 referrals, qualified introductions to grow your studio. And those first 30 then bring the next 30 and away you go. It's a great way on what I would call a shoestring or a bootstrap budget to grow your studio. And we still do that now. I was chatting to you before the call started about one of our franchisees who supported his members really, really well. And he's grown his whole studio through networking, and he was completely new to that.
Yeah, because it just, the value proposition of Fit20 lends itself so well to that dynamic, right? Because you're offering a free workout, right? That is correct, isn't it? A free consultation, right? And then
so what I say there, sorry to talk over you, Lawrence. What I say there is it's at our expense because it's not free. Free for you, but it's at our expense. But it's great because you come in and you try it and you just realize that, wow, this is amazing. And 7, 8 out of every 10 people that come into the studio, it's okay, I'll give this a shot. I'll do this for 6, 12 months and see how it goes. And of course, from previous people you've had on your podcast, we know that if you get into Fit20, it's Fit20 for life, to improve your life, but it's also for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the reason I brought up about the introductory workout is it's just BNI and just networking events in general, where you've got, especially if you've got like a busy professional audience or group, are very useful ways to get started, because they're all going to be likely to be quite interested because it's just such a powerful value proposition for them. And then they're very likely to know people who are also going to be interested. And what's BNI membership now? Is it like $1,000 a year, something like that? So it's a relatively low cost way to grow your business, I think.
Yeah, it's free if you go as a guest.
Right. Yeah.
And the worst that's going to happen there is you're going to meet some good people and expand your network, maybe learn something.
Have a nice breakfast.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of online stuff as well. So if the breakfast is bad, you made it. But also, you never know. It just takes one idea to change your life for the better, whether it's business or otherwise. And I don't know what it is about the organization. And we seem to do that with Fit 20 as well. We just attract people who are minded a certain way. They're positive, they're solution focused, they collaborate, what you call calm in the way they approach things. So yeah, it's a great way to engage in the business area for sure.
So you've obviously spoken about why Fit 20 appealed to you. I appreciate you sharing that. So what's the state of play at the moment? How many franchisees do you have in the UK that you're responsible for? And what are you as managing director? Because I actually must admit, I thought you were franchisee master, and maybe you are that as well. And then I was like, oh, he's managing director, so you probably have more responsibility in the UK, or maybe so. I imagine for the entire Fit 20 operation in the UK. But just curious, like, what's your focus on? What are your responsibilities?
So I'm ultimately responsible for the overall functioning and success of Fit 20 in the UK. So if you sort of think of my priorities in terms of hierarchy, is to make sure that anyone that walks into a Fit 20 studio has a fabulous experience, a safe but fabulous experience. That's the top priority. And then our personal trainers and franchise owners have all the resources, knowledge, skills to help lots of people to be healthy and fit and strong. And then the head office team that delivers all of that is to make sure that that's all functioning really well. It sounds really simple.
No, it doesn't, because I know exactly. Well, I don't know exactly, but I understand how challenging it is to keep on top of systems and things like that. So no, I get it for sure. But I'm listening to you. I'm like, that sounds like a really cool job, because the impact you're having. It's like you create a system, you recruit some new franchisees, that you're going to be improving hundreds of people's health along the way. And that makes what you're doing quite fulfilling. And I have the same feeling in what I do, because obviously in the podcast and the membership, we're very focused on helping strength studio owners grow their business. So the way I see it is they're growing their business, they're helping more clients. So it's another way for me to do that. And obviously I have a studio on the side where we do that directly as well. But that's the kind of work that is really fulfilling, isn't it? Ultimately, or one kind of work that's very fulfilling. So what are the plans then? You've just come out of lockdown, right? You're a couple months out. So what's the plans in terms of here? Are you going to, like you said to me before we got recording, everyone's working super hard. So just elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate and blessed to have fantastic people, the franchisees. We've got a wonderful culture, really collaborative, really supportive. And they've come out of the gates running. They've hit the ground absolutely running. We've grown over 20% to our pre-lockdown peak in terms of studio memberships. And the focus for us is twofold as Fit 20 UK. Number one is to have as many people as possible across the UK experience Fit 20 just once. Because the one thing lockdown's taught us is we need to look after our health. To make sure that we're in the best shape possible for our immune system. The ultimate defense we have against whatever virus or bug the world throws at us in future is going to be our immune system. And what we do with Fit 20 absolutely helps with that. And then people have had time to reflect on that as well. So it's really important to me and us as a company that we get in front of as many people as possible. So our priority as the master franchisor is to support our franchisees to grow their studios and their exposure. So we're doing a lot of work on that. We've grown 20% now. I don't know if I've said that since we reopened, which is great.
Really impressive, yeah.
To the peak. And we'll continue to do that because, the UK's got 67 million people. We need to have 500 studios, I think, to scratch the surface of the potential of people we can help. if all we have is just an average of 200 people per studio, that's 100,000 lives that we can really impact for the better with the type of training we do. And of course, if most of us, no man or woman is an island, if we're in good shape, then we impact others around us, maybe by inspiring them to look after themselves.
Compounds, right?
Not. Yeah. And if not that, then just looking after them.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. I'm just curious, what are you guys doing? What have you found? Because I had a really fascinating conversation with Walter recently about marketing inside the membership. We did a little podcast on sort of video content on kind of the first things you need to think about when starting a strength studio. But then we also gone into some of the marketing, and he was explaining to me how no one tactic works for all studios. There are some tactics that work incredibly well in one place, and then they don't work at all in other places, which is fascinating. And I'm just curious what's been working for UK franchisees, which may not work as well outside, or even there might be tactics that work for one studio in the UK and not another. But I'm curious, what are the maybe, I don't know, top 3 go-tos? I mean, BNI is probably one, right? That work well to get members.
Yeah, you knew the answer to that question before you finished answering it. So networking in general. We're in the business of personal training, and the clue's in the first word in that title. It's personal. So we have to get in contact with people, and the better you develop that contact, the more trust, understanding. And like I said, if somebody comes into the studio, I know we can help them, but they've got to experience it for themselves. So they end up buying rather than being sold to, I think. So that would be one, is networking in general, and BNI would be at the top of the networking thing. I am biased, but based on experience, it's not an accident that it's the world's most successful business referral organization. Secondly is online, that space, without a doubt. People are more and more connected and glued to phones. We're doing this, through the interface of the screen. So online marketing, whether it's Google or Facebook, we find that works pretty well for our studio owners. Targeted.
So just to be more specific, so what, paid Google, paid Facebook, paid social, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so targeted Facebook adverts. Okay. You target a specific demographic or age group, women over 50 or men over 40, that sort of thing.
Okay. Sorry, continue. Is there more on the tactical side?
And the third one is actually, I think, massively overlooked. And it's sort of a subset of the first one, which is just speaking. And Walter's brilliant at this. He says, be humble in asking for help. And if you've got a studio of 100, 200 members, that's potentially 200 ambassadors for your brand. We tend to have people, they'll come for a free trial session and just get it and stay for a very long time, or they just won't get it and they say, well, I want to go where there's dancing and lights and lycra and all that. And that's okay. Everyone's got their thing. But these people really they believe in what they're sharing. So referrals, asking your studio members to say, hey, look, could you talk to somebody who would benefit from this? And that works really well. And Walter, I still remember when he first started training me in what to do for Fit 20, he said, your first 50 members, you'll have to go out and find them. But your second 50 will come from the first 50 if you do the job right. And we're seeing that happening.
It sounds like you feel, though, in order to get the referrals, you have to be proactive and ask for those referrals for the most part. Is that right?
Yeah, there's, so we've got a franchisee in Leeds, Kieran, who you've also had on your podcast.
Kieran.
Yeah, well, we love you and what you do as well. We're big fans. So it's mutual. And, Kieran was telling us the other day, there was a lady who came along for an introductory training. She said, can I bring my husband along? So naturally, if this just makes sense, you're going to bring other people along. But people are so busy, they don't actually think that, hey, I could tell somebody else. So sometimes you just have to remind them and put it at the front of their attention. Because, in a 20-minute workout like we have, where there's no showering or changing and it's on the appointment, chances are you're probably busy thinking about your next thing as soon as your workout's done. So as much as you love Fit 20, we haven't got you for the other 167 hours and 40 minutes for the rest of the week. So we just have to make that request, and people are like, oh, sure. Most people are happy to help, right? If they can, they will, as long as you don't make it too onerous.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's obviously such a simple concept, but I think it gets neglected a lot. Maybe because, and I'm probably guilty of this, perhaps some of us get a little arrogant. They think, oh, if people really value this, they'll tell people. But arrogance is the right word. It's just a lack of awareness, maybe. But, it's just like you say, like when people finish their workout, they got 1,000,001 things that they're focused on doing that day, looking after their kids, going to work, doing their job right, getting their lunch. Like they're just, you're not right up there, in terms of their priorities.
Yeah.
And I'm just,
also,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also there are a lot of people who come to us and we absolutely help them. But how they feel about themselves is a challenge for them. And they know that this is helping them, but then to go and tell somebody, look, I'm doing this thing, it's really working for me, is then an admission that they weren't comfortable or happy with where they were at or where they've got up to. And they know that maybe in a couple of months, when I look like this image of what I think I should be. So I think that's a big part of what stops people. Is our self-image or how we perceive it. You'll have somebody, let's say they've put on some weight through lockdown, and they don't want to go and tell everyone, hey, I've put on all this weight and it's really good and I'm about to lose it. Some people will, but there'll be others who'll feel a bit embarrassed or uncomfortable about it. And that's where actually making that personal request and helping them see that actually it's a good thing to share. And it's not actually something to be embarrassed about because, it's life. That's what happens.
That's fascinating. I hadn't heard it said like that before, but it makes total sense. Do you know what I have heard, and I've always been a bit skeptical about, is some people claim that, and I've heard this from ARX studio owners, because ARX is obviously very kind of new and advanced technology, and it's probably the most advanced resistance training machines a lot of people have ever tried. And what they said, some of these business owners said is some people, it's like their best kept secret, right? They don't want to talk about it with others because they're like, no, I don't want anyone else having this. This is mine. And I was a little bit skeptical of that because I don't think people are that selfish. I think people are more likely to share it. Have you experienced that though with Fit 20 customers at all? That kind of like secret club kind of thing to it?
Not in a huge way. I think, there's out of every 100 people, right, that we're all the same in one sense, but we're all so different. So I imagine there'll be one or two people who are like, okay, I'm just going to do my thing. I don't want them to get an edge on me. And there'll be others who'll just be shouting and evangelizing from the rooftops, and then everything in the middle. But yeah, out of 100 people, if you ask everyone or even half of them, some will respond positively. And so, yeah, those are the top three things.
Do you think out of those people that you mentioned who are conscious about self-image, probably the best, I don't know whether you guys do this, but obviously I know of studios that offer a free workout, right? So, or 10% off for the month or some kind of incentive, right? And I know speaking to Sherry McMillan, who's a very successful studio owner in the US, she had done a lot of kind of focus groups kind of stuff and talking to clients around what they want in terms of incentives, and lo and behold, more workouts, right? or a discount of what they already buy. And I thought that was fascinating just because that's good evidence that that's what we should be giving away, right? As an incentive. And I'm just curious, do you guys do that at Fit 20? So I'd love to hear, firstly, if you have an incentive, and I want to know exactly how you word that referral request, especially if someone's self-conscious, if you could elaborate on that.
Gosh, okay. So
maybe we can role play.
Full disclosure. Sorry? Role play, yeah. I'm probably not the best person to do this. I'm competent.
No pressure.
I don't do it day in, day out. But the gist of it is literally, if it was you after a workout, how you feeling? Typically, you want to have some evidence that it's been good for you. Now with Fit20, we have our proprietary app, which shows you after 6 weeks, using some clever gadgetry behind the scenes, what your progress has been in the exercise. So, and we know about the Fit20 study because you had James Steele on here, Professor James Steele. But, you get 30% strength increase in the first 12 months and up to 50. And then you kind of maintain that throughout your life. There's a very much less decline than without doing something as amazing as Fit20. So once somebody starts to see some benefits, that's probably a good time to have that conversation and say, I need your help. Would you be willing to help me? And most people, you have a relationship. If you have that, again, it's personal training. We build that relationship and that trust. And we're genuinely there to help them. If somebody says, look, I'll do this for 2 or 3 weeks and see if I can have washboard abs, etc., we just tell them, look, we need to manage your expectations. It's not fair on you to give you that expectation. And just say, which of your friends can you think of that would benefit from something like this, who's particularly busy or needs to get in shape or has got some health challenges that you feel we might be able to help? And we'll give them a free session. And of course, we do the thorough intake, make sure we understand where they're at and where they want to go, and then see how Fit20 can be a bridge from where they are to where they want to go. And that usually works really well.
So you haven't had to give them an incentive to do that?
We do that as well. So okay. At the moment, we've got a campaign that's running that says if you refer someone, they can have 4 weeks free, and you can have 4 weeks free as well to try it out.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a bit of a lost leader, though. But I suppose over the lifetime of the value of the client, it probably doesn't make too much difference. How is that working? Is that working well?
Really, really well. In fact, we've just had an email through from one of our studio owners who's doing this saying, I've got no concerns about growing my studio.
Well, that's a good testimonial. And I should say, I know that obviously a lot of the information is sensitive and confidential within Fit20. So if I ever overstep the mark, Niri, just tell me. That's really interesting. I like the way you word that. I need your help. I was wondering if you could help me with, is there anyone in your network who you think might be interested? I actually think there's a lot of benefit to being specific, because I think if you can make it as little work as possible for that individual to think of someone who could find it useful, that's obviously makes sense, right? You don't want to make it hard for them. You don't want, maybe by being quite broad and saying, is there anyone, like saying, who do you know who's particularly busy, maybe a business owner like yourself, who would really benefit from this? And that will instantly shortlist people in their head potentially. So I don't know what you think about that as just a little trick.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. If you think about it, you've got the man or the woman who's only got 20 minutes a week to do a workout and look after their health. And then you want to give them something that's really long, elaborate, and complicated. It's not going to happen. So I think you're spot on. We're in a convenience-driven society. We're obsessed with convenience and instant. So yeah, the quicker, simpler, easier you can make it, the better. And in terms of proprietary, I really appreciate you saying, if something's overstepping, then to say. But yeah, obviously I'm not going to just take all our systems and processes and post them on the internet and say, Merry Christmas, everyone. But equally...
And that's just what I do. Because I'm a fool.
Yeah, so you're doing it for it. But, there's so many people who need help that, there's plenty for everyone to go out. And you have to have that sort of blue sky abundance mindset, don't you?
Yeah. And I like what you said about efficiency and even the approach to asking a referral, because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, if you're efficient in your workout, you should be, and your target market values efficiency over everything else. And let's face it, I imagine efficiency is the biggest sort of USP that we have in our industry, right? Over the, that is evidence-based, that is providing enormous health benefits, is the efficiency. And you've got to be able to then communicate that for everything you do, so that really resonates with your target market in terms of their interaction with your business. So if like scheduling's high friction, or if anything, any part they're engaging with you just feels inefficient, there's going to be a bit of a cognitive dissonance there, or an issue there. So that totally makes sense for me. So that's win-win, because then you don't have to go and do, I don't know, a load of elaborate long form copy emails to try and get people to give you referrals because I'm not going to read them anyway. I'm just curious in terms of obviously the most, like you say, personal training, it's personal. If you can ask this in person, that is where you're going to have the best impact and most likely referral. But would you also utilize social media, email as well I mean, you did this campaign, right, which was over email, I assume. So you would utilize obviously online platforms as well to ask for referral?
Yeah. I think it's called a marketing mix, isn't it, in industry parlance? And you need to have a bunch of things. And you said earlier, absolutely spot on, that some things work better for others than they do for somebody else. And it's a matter of working out what works best for you. Now, we have some experience, obviously, of what works better in a small town versus a big city or that sort of thing, or whether if you're right next door to a sports club or a school or a shopping centre or what have you, kind of have a sense based on experience and track record what works best. But you've got to have 2 or 3 different things working because sometimes things just change. If I find that I get loads of leads through Facebook advertising, for some reason it can stop for a day or 2, and you have to just look at it. Maybe you need to just modify your message, but equally it might be you need to maybe do something else.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that very much relates to the series I've been doing with Dave Smith, PhD, on decision making and focusing on process more than outcome, and realizing that you can never be 100% confident in anything. I don't know if you've been listening to that series, Niri. I know you're a very busy man, so you're very selective about which ones you listen to, but that's been very eye-opening for me and many of the listeners. I'm just looking at some bullets I wanted to talk about with you as we draw to a close. Let's talk about the opportunity. So I know listeners have heard me talk about Fit20 before. We've had Bram on, we've had Walter on a couple of times. We've had Kieran. I think that's everyone from Fit20 we've had on. But just to refresh things and just to inform people, my listeners, about the opportunity with Fit20, I'd love to hear more about that opportunity for franchisees. As I know, I have a lot of listeners globally, but specifically in the UK, who are interested in a Fit20 franchise. So do you want to just give the over sort of just the overview of the Fit20 franchise opportunity?
With pleasure, thank you. So we have a boutique wellness studio concept, really small footprint, no showers or changing rooms, which means staffing's low, rents are low compared to big spaces. And of course, the whole setup is really well worked out with 12 years of refinement. Like you said, Walter's very clever in the area of strength training, but he's also a great business brain. And he's constantly with the head office team there and with our input from all the different countries that are now involved. I think we're in 10 countries now. We're constantly looking at ways to refine and remove that friction from an experience point of view. And if we remove that for the customer, then we reduce that for the franchisee. And, I think if there's somebody out there, so if we go back full circle to how we started the interview with my background, and I said to you, I was looking for all sorts of things. My mum's still waiting for me to get a proper job, but there wasn't back then, and I don't know, I think it's improving, but it's got a long way to go. For people that want to go down the traditional employment route of get a qualification, get a job, or go straight out of school into an apprenticeship or a job or whatever, there's some reasonable guidance and pathway there. But if you're thinking, I want to be in business, you've got YouTube University where you teach yourself, and that can be risky and expensive, because if you're lucky enough to stumble across somebody that signs you up for their online course that's authentic and you make it work, that's great. And that's where I think something like franchising is fantastic, because you're kind of putting stabilizers on moving a business forward. So I love what we're able to offer people. And then if you want something that's cause-driven, that can make a difference to people, where you know that for every pound you take, you're providing hundreds, if not thousands of pounds in value in return, because what price to put on health and wellness? There's a gentleman in our Exeter studio, he's in his 80s, and after his training, he picks up a pen and says, "Watch this," to Duncan, our studio owner, drops it on the floor, and Duncan's like, "What is this guy doing?" And he bends down, picks it up, and puts it on the table. He says, see that? And Doug says, yeah. He says, I couldn't do that before Fit 20.
And he does that after a session where he's fatigued.
Exactly. So in terms of quality of life,
I could do that after a session, probably. I'd probably fall over.
Shaking, yeah. But, it's given him the strength to be able to, and strength changes everything. So for somebody to be able to do something that really makes a difference like that, and I know that when I got into the consulting thing, I kind of stumbled across it by trial and error. And I spent a lot of money before I was making money when I was doing my consulting. And it's great if you want to forge a career in helping people to be healthy, fit, and strong, and actually have a business that can actually be very viable. And, we've got a plan, as I've said, to have 500 studios. Some of those people that get involved with us are going to have maybe 20, 40, 50 studios. So it's more than a living. There's job creation, employment. It's really cause-driven what we're doing. So if someone was listening to this and said, yeah, that sounds like my bag, then obviously it'd be great if they contacted us and we showed them more of what was on offer in case we can help them.
And how did they contact you exactly?
So the easiest way is through our website, fit20.co.uk. We've got a franchise-specific website as well, fit20franchise.co.uk.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And is there, just before I wrap up this episode with you, Niri, is there anything else, any parting thoughts or ideas you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think whatever we do, it's really important that we have something to look forward to. When lockdown happened, one of the things I learned is there's a lot of mental health problems that people had, right? And one of the reasons people feel like that is they don't have something to look forward to. Because if you have something to look forward to, no matter how you're feeling, you think, oh, it'll be all right when I go and do that. And if we can find a healthy way to do that, then that's really fulfilling and long term. So what I love about the work I do is I think that we help people that walk into our studios to have a more compelling future where they can live a fuller, fitter, healthier, and stronger life. And it's the same for our franchisees. And yes, it's a business, but for me, it's personal as well, because I will only work with people that, so if you were to come to me and say, I'm interested in fitness, we have the usual conversation around why you like it, and we answer all the questions why you should like it. But the question I look for is I just say, look, do you think you're going to enjoy working with me and my team? And the question I'm asking myself is, am I going to enjoy working with you and your team? Because if not, then there's a million other ways that you can make money and earn everything. But we want to have fun as well.
Yeah. Wise words. And you're qualifying people out who are a bad fit, which is good. I respect that. And it's best for both parties if it's not a good fit, because otherwise you just end up wasting a lot of time and money together. I also love what you said there about just the impact, obviously, you're having in Fit 20 and that we have as strength training entrepreneurs. And this reminded me of something that I believe Luke said to me from Discover Strength. I'm sure you're familiar with. He said that one of the things they focus on is making sure that session, and this relates to what you're saying about something to look forward to, is the best part of that person's day. Because when I have my workout, it is like, okay, maybe during it's not always my favorite thing, right? Obviously. But like at the end of it, I feel great, right? We all feel awesome at the end of our workouts. And it is probably the best part of my day. And I go to bed at night and I sometimes go through what I did in my workout. I'm like, yeah, I did this exercise and I did this. And sometimes I come back and I'm looking after my son in the evenings and he's like 1.5 years, so he has no idea what I'm talking about. But I'll go through my workout of him and he's just looking at me going, Dada, you know. And I'll be going through like my workout and my fiance is like, yeah, he doesn't care. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just enjoy it. Anyway, I'm digressing, but I really am passionate about this, obviously. And I just think that it's just an awesome business to be in. Obviously, I'm a, business owner. We have a studio and we're training people. And so I see that firsthand and obviously work with so many people and there's so many listeners who do that and understand that. And so if people are listening to this or watching this and they're kind of on the fence, then if you, like you said, if you want a business with a real cause and real purpose, this is the one to look into. Absolutely. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode and download free resources to help you grow your strength training business, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 324. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.